Hi, my friend. Welcome back to episode 6 in this series of stories that Dan and Kathy are bringing to us. Thank you so much for stopping by and catching up on this, the end of this series of stories. Please, if you haven't, hit that like button for this video. We would greatly appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed, we would appreciate you subscribing to our channel. It greatly helps us to get these stories out worldwide and makes them more popular all the time. Today we hear about how God takes Dan and Kathy back to their beloved Fort Wayne and the miracles that happened so they could move back to Fort Wayne. And so let's celebrate together as we listen to this, the final episode in this series for Dan and Kathy. Here's Dan and Kathy.
So, just out of the blue, and I think it was a God thing, it was 2016, we decided, what do you think about putting the house on the market? And I just redone the whole kitchen for Kathy. I put a lot of work into that. And we decided, let's do it, because it was a big house. We didn't need it. It was just the two of us, too much to take care of anyways.
And I think we thought it wouldn't sell quickly like the other one didn't.
Yeah, because the other one, that's going to take a couple years, so let's get started now. Well, long story short, we ended up putting the house on the market on Tuesday, election night of 2016. It sold that Saturday. We had 3 or 4 people. We had somebody come in the first night of the election, and that was a couple that ended up buying it. Was that Saturday? But we had 3 or 4 couples by that Saturday.
My.
So we knew it's a God thing. So okay, God, I think this is a sign. Here's your sign. So we had to hustle around to find a place to look for to rent, because we couldn't quite pull the plug yet. We were trying to get some things in order yet. Didn't think that would happen that quick. So we found a place through our real estate agent who went to our church, and we were looking at these townhomes, which are nice, but then you got to carry your stuff up 2 or 3 flights of stairs. It's like, no, I don't want to do that. And she says, I have somebody, or I know a person that deals with this subdivision. It's for 55 and over. And she said they have an opening at one house that they're renting. Went out there and looked at it, and then the people that were renting it, they had built it for their mom and dad, and their mom and dad had passed. They still own the property, brother and sister. They interviewed us. It was kind of different, and but they were impressed with us, and we got in there. We're able to find this place, which was like a big ranch.
Which was good. That was good for us to get used to a ranch, because we never
had it.
we didn't have the ranch. It was good for us to get used to that.
Yeah, and so we ended up going there for 4 years, and then at 4 years, of course, before that, 2019 COVID hit, and then in 2020 I was laid off for a couple months with my company. And that gave me the first taste of retirement, what it was like. And I thought, I don't really want to go back.
But we had already bought the house when we started renting the house in Illinois for the transition. We bought a house in Fort Wayne. We thought, well, maybe we could get it paid off before we actually retire. Not thinking that it would be that quick, But there again, it was a God thing. And we found a house that we could afford, and it was important to us that if something should happen to either one of us, that the other one could still handle it. And then COVID hit, and Dan got a taste of what it was like to be off work, and decided, and nobody could go back to the office in Chicago. So I explained to my boss what was going on, and he said, go. We can't go back to the office yet. And so we ended up just moving.
Well, and backing up too, when we just were looking in Indiana, we looked at several places, several locations, and that's when we wanted to make sure the Lord was releasing us to come back. Because I felt like in some ways you don't want to go back to Egypt. Not that Indiana was Egypt, but you don't want to go backwards. And I said, God, if you're in it, then open everything up. Well, first time we made an offer in a house, the house had sold within 2 hours before I even made an offer.
Yeah.
That's how quickly it was selling. So I spotted one, long story short, on the real estate app, and I called a real estate agent who, by the way, another God thing, and being our real estate agent was a girl that my daughter met at college. Her and my son-in-law went to school together, and they're now best friends.
Wow.
What's the odds of that happening?
Right.
And so I called her and I said, Rochelle, I said, you need to get over there. And I said, you need to look at this house. I really like it, the way it looks and everything. She walks in the house.
They did a video.
She did a video. We did a FaceTime. She walks through the house. She goes, you won't believe this house. It smells like it's new. It's 9 years old. She said, I just found out on the way over here that the mother bought it for her daughter, but her daughter didn't live there. Her daughter lived with the grandmother because her boyfriend lived in Ohio, because the border's right there. And so the house smelled new, didn't have any dings on the walls or anything, and I fell in love with it. Well, I decided I made an offer without asking Kathy. And
Not advisable.
I made an offer, and the lady accepted it 2 hours later. Told Kathy we got a home. She just seen pictures of it. So this was on a Tuesday or Wednesday. So I called Rochelle back, and I said, look, I said, is there any way that we can get into the house on Saturday if we come over? I said, because I got to show Kathy this. I can't live, wait till just to... If she hates the house, I don't know what we're going to do, but we're going to have to go. And so we drove over there, and she goes through the house and looks at it. She comes out and goes, so what do you think? She goes, I love it. And I told her, I said...
I feel like I need to throw
I
up.
said I need to throw up because I felt so worried that she was going to hate the house. Again, another God thing, because a real estate agent knew somebody in the banking industry, in the mortgage company, that had a very reasonable closing cost. She sent us to him. He ended up being at the Fort Wayne Coliseum having a lawn or garden show.
Okay.
Had his booth set up. Went and talked to him. Did all the paperwork on a Saturday, and by that Wednesday they were ready to close.
I've never heard of that.
We
I did real estate for 4.5 years. I've never heard
We hadn't either. It was.
I've never heard cash deals go through that fast.
He said everything just flowed so smoothly
Like
God.
that it opened up, and I said, well, that's another God thing, because that was just the way everything happened. For getting the house we have, for the price we have, because now we look back, and if we would have waited till last year when I officially retired, that the costs would have been almost $100,000 more. Plus our interest rate is, I think interest rates are at 6%, close to 6 now, and we're at 2.375. So again, another God thing. And I don't say it to brag or boast. I just say it because it was God.
Because you know.
I'm very grateful that everything opened up the way it did. So you can't say that God wasn't in it, because he was from the very beginning. And then on top of this whole thing, we were looking for a church. And I don't believe in church shopping, but sometimes that's what you do when you come to a new location. But we had tried one church, wasn't quite, I wouldn't say dissatisfied, just wasn't feel like it was a place where we wanted to go. And we're just driving out one day, and long story short, we find one 5 minutes from our house. And the first Sunday we walked in there, and it's like, this is it. This is home.
Yeah.
So now, another God thing. So God, when God says He orchestrates your steps, I believe He orchestrates your steps, even though there may be bumps and roadblocks and things along the way, that He knows exactly what He's doing.
Trust in the Lord.
And trust in the Lord with
heart.
all your heart, lead not to your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your path.
Amen. Amen.
He won't bail on you. It may feel like He's abandoned you, but He won't fail you.
Right.
I've always heard the saying that he's never early, but He's never late.
Yeah, my mom used to say that all the time.
You know, and I think that's where you have to trust the God that you know. And again, I keep coming back to the 30 years we were in Chicago. That the God that you knew as a kid, the God you accepted as a kid, is now become the personal God that you know. That the God that is not some thing that you've made up, but you realize He's the God that has been there the whole time.
He's your lifeline.
He's your lifeline. He's walked with you through the ups and downs, yes, through the good times, but definitely through the tough times.
Yeah.
That He's been there the whole time, and He's walked with you, and He's, like the footprints in the sand. How many times is that true? When He didn't feel like He was there, but He was actually carrying you. Instead of you don't see your footprints, because He was carrying you through those difficult times. So don't sit back and say that, well, God's abandoned me, or God's not real, or He's forsaken me, or whatever it is. You got to realize, yes, that is not true. That God is always there, especially as a believer. That God is always faithful. Why we go through things, that's God's choosing. Learned over the years He's sovereign. He's in control. Why did I have to go through heart surgery? Why did you have to go through what you did? It's just part of life sometimes, and things we have to go through. But again, God is not so much concerned about our happiness as our holiness, making us more into His image, more into what He wants us to become. And that may be tough. There may be some tough times, and we've had some friends go through some things that are gone through hell and back, even worse than ours. And not that ours is the worst out there by any means, but I'm just saying, you just look back and say, I don't understand it, but their faith just remains strong, and that just blows me away. And that gives me confidence to know that, okay, God, You've got it.
Yep.
Why some people go through more things than other people, I don't know. That's the sovereignty of God. But it doesn't change who God is. He still loves me. He loves me just as much as He did when He created me. And He knew all these things were going to happen even before I was conceived in my mother's womb. That's the amazing thing about it. He knew all these things were going to happen. He knew where we'd be, that we'd be 30 years in Chicago. He'd know we'd go through the things that I went through, what I did. He'd know to go through the problems. He'd know I'd have heart surgery. He'd know all these things. So if we understand that our lives are orchestrated by God, it sure makes a life a lot easier and not easy as far as, hey, I want this, bring it on.
Right.
It's easy as far as, okay, God, I trust You. Even if it brings death, I still trust You.
I want to ask you one more question, and then I know Kathy's got some things that she wants to share, but I want to ask, you're going for heart surgery. You're getting ready to go. That was a beautiful picture of, you're going to go beyond that door. Are you ever going to see Him again? You had made some mistakes in your life by choice. with the other lady and with the family stuff and whatever those things are. Talk to the guy that is looking at that. And what I'm struggling with is how to ask the question. Talk to the guy that's looking at possible death. Okay? And he has done some things in his past. And he has asked for forgiveness. He's received forgiveness. But did you ever have a time when, boy, did he really forgive me for that? Is that really clear? Because I see total healing in you with those concerns. Talk to the guy about what it's like to know.
To know that you know.
To know that you know that God has forgiven that. God has put it under the blood. We talk about it being under the blood, but our accuser comes again and he steals our peace. Talk to that person.
Yeah, I think, well, just like with the family thing we went through with that, family members, because of what had happened there was that feeling of you ask God for forgiveness, you ask your family to forgive you. The hardest thing is always to forgive yourself.
Right.
And I struggled with that for years. I can remember back driving down the road and my tears would just well up in my eyes because of the past. And it took probably, I would say, a good 15 years, maybe almost up to the time of the heart surgery, believe it or not, for that to be released for me. Not that I still can't get emotional, but I notice that my mind doesn't go back to that anymore.
Awesome.
I mean, it's not that it's not part of my past, but it's not part of my past. You know what I mean?
Right.
It doesn't define who I am. So for the guy that's saying, the first thing you have to understand, if you've asked God for forgiveness, He does forgive. Of course, the second thing is, too, then you have to make sure that you don't keep continually sinning. That's the other thing. But you have to ask for forgiveness. If it's a family member or persons or whatever it is, you have to ask for forgiveness. Now they can choose not to forgive, and I've seen it happen where people don't forgive, like in Kathy and I's case, where a husband has come back or a wife has come back, where the husband or wife doesn't want to forgive, and the marriage is over. And it's sad because I know it can work because it worked for Kathy and I. And the third thing is just forgiving yourself. And again, I struggled with that for years, but the good thing was, I think that's why when I went beyond that door we talked about for the surgery, I don't know what came over me, and I just said, God, I think every day is a day of recommitting our lives to the Lord.
Yes.
I don't think it's a once saved type thing. The Bible says to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. It's not like, hey, I'm saved and I can go out and live my life any way I want to. Don't ever have to worry about temptations or sin. We sin every day. And I think there's things that we have to ask for forgiveness. There's things that we know we do, and there's things that we don't know we do. And the Holy Spirit, I think, will bring to mind what things that we have done. But I think there was a release in my spirit to know, God, forgive me for anything I've done. And I think at that point was such a freedom, knowing, okay, God, I don't know. I didn't feel any anxiety, like I said, I didn't feel any anxiety, didn't feel any worry. It almost like maybe I was going in to get my tonsils out, because I had my tonsils out when I was a kid too. Like that, I'd be out in a couple hours, it'd be fine. Maybe that's what I had in my mind. This is no biggie. It's just open heart surgery.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're just
they're
opening
just
up.
going to stop your heart for
Just
a
stop
little
my
while.
heart for a little bit.
Not very long.
Yeah. Now for 5.5 hours, I had my heart stopped. So big deal. But I realized now that I think it was contentment, just God letting me know that I've got this.
Sure.
I've had you this whole time. I've got this again, because I think because of what had led up to the surgery, with the things I already talked about, knowing that, okay, God, I finally getting to understand how you've orchestrated my whole life, how you've had me, even though I've turned my life and done things that are not pleasing. You've been with me, you've forgiven me, my past is gone, and now I can move on and say, okay, God, whatever comes. And that I think is a freedom for a guy or anybody that's struggling with things, and knowing that you don't know how close death's door was for me at that time, and knowing that I'm sitting here today 7 years later, I'm still breathing. God gave me another several years of breath. So
I think that to that person who needs to know that they're forgiven, Satan is always going to try to bring anything back. Maybe God didn't forgive you. Maybe, especially if you still struggle with some of those things. That's when you have to take it to the Lord, just give it to Him again, and stop taking it back from Him. If He says He forgave you, and that your sin is under the blood, then you tell Satan to back off, because that's not what the Word of God says.
Exactly. Good word. Good word. Well, Dan, do you want to share anything else?
no, I think more than anything, just my heart has always been, and we've already talked to our pastor at our church, one of the pastors, is I know pornography is a real thing, and I know we didn't talk about it real much, but the fact is the ramifications of that are devastating to a marriage, to an individual. And the problem is it's crept into the church today, and there's many men that struggle with it because of the internet.
Sure.
And my heart goes out to men, that men need to be set free, because it's a way that the enemy can work and destroy a marriage very quickly, because you look at a picture, you look at a video of the opposite sex, and you think, wow, she looks fantastic, but never realizing that woman could be being abused, she could be on drugs, she could be, and the pictures are all dialed up to make her look like she's really attractive and all this stuff. And we make it think that that's what you really want. And it's back to what the enemy tries to do, is try to make it look like your wife's not that way. Your wife's had her kids. Your wife's body's changing. And yet you look at yourself, and if you're really honest with yourself, like I'm honest with Kathy, when she comes back and says something about the way she looks, I keep coming back and saying, but we're both changing together.
Yeah.
You start out with no hair, no teeth, you wear a diaper. You end up with no hair, no teeth, and a diaper in so many ways, right? I mean, it is comical to think about it, but your body changes.
Yes.
You can try to keep it up. You can try to get Botox and all these other things, but your body's changing. And I think as men, because I think as men, when you realize, I'm not ashamed of the way God, and I think you and I talked about this, Tim, is that God created us When a man looks at a woman, he looks at her with wow. Just like when Adam saw Eve, I don't think he said wow. I think he said whoa man for woman, right? I think he was attracted, not in a sexual way, because sin had not entered the world yet. But he looked at her with something that was really physically beautiful. And that's the way a man is supposed to look at a woman. The problem is that Satan has taken the pornography and ran with it and thinking this is how your wife can look all the time. This is how she can act all the time. When in reality, that's not reality. Because things change.
Life happens.
Life happens.
Life happens.
And if men can understand that, to realize that you've changed, your wife's changed, but never apologize for the way God created you. And when you look at a woman, when a man looks at a woman, he looks at her, he shouldn't be looking at her to lust, but looking at something he desires. Especially if you're looking to date. You're not looking at, boy, she's intelligent. You're not looking for that per se. I mean, you can be one of the qualities, but when a man looks at a woman, he's looking at, wow, I really like that. I'd like to date her. Not treating her as an object, like pornography can do, but treating her as a human being and falling, and then getting to know that individual, right? And
so what you're saying is don't be sorry for the way God created a man.
Don't be sorry for the way God created you. Don't let that change.
Yeah.
Don't let the enemy change you on that. Because if you do that, then it's just gonna mess things up. And I've said that many times when I've taught the classes, that don't apologize for that, because God has put that in there for a reason. Otherwise, how would you be attracted to the opposite sex? You think you know what love is until you're married and you go through the hard times in a marriage, and you're still together after the hard times in marriage. Then that's what love is.
That's when you've gone through some things that should have just taken you down, and you almost feel stronger. It's almost like you hold hands and dig your feet in the sand and dare somebody to move you. You know, at least you're hanging on together. Sometimes you don't even know what love is until you've gone through some really crappy times together. Times that you think you're not gonna survive.
One of the things too, I want to say too, for couples that have kids at home, and a guy's struggling with pornography because your wife she's tired, she's exhausted from raising your kids, is to get into your wife's world. One of the things I'll say too is, Kathy and I taught a marriage class at our church we came from in Illinois.
Yeah.
It's called Sex Begins in the Kitchen. The class
full.
was packed the first couple of weeks until they understand what it was about.
Sure.
Because everybody thought, because of the subject matter, this is what's going to happen. And it was about getting into each other's world, especially for a man, and your wife is home with the kids, to get to know what makes her tick, what makes her happy. Because too many times, again, we were talking about, a guy comes home, the wife's exhausted from watching the kids, he wants to go golfing with the buddies, or he wants to do this or do that. Well, what would help your wife out with the kids? And by doing certain things helps that marriage out, and to realize it is a partnership, and she's trying to help you, but you got to, in return, you got to help her first. And you got to take your part, helping her do the dishes, helping her clean the house, which we've never looked at it as it's a man thing or a woman thing. We've just pitched in and done it. That's just the way we've been.
But I have never, ever, ever expected you to do that, ever. That I enjoy doing that. It always bugged me when I didn't get home till 6 at night and he'd already have dinner ready. But if you really care for somebody, it's not a his or her thing. It's how can I help you? I mean, I don't enjoy helping him carry heavy wood things that he's working on either. But he can't do it himself.
I think it's anything, just having the servant attitude
Yes.
that we don't have in marriage.
Yep.
It's about me. My needs need to be met.
Right.
But I'm to serve her, she's to serve me. And if I'm to be the man of the house, and I don't mean that in a male chauvinist pig attitude, I mean as way God intended the marriage to be, the head of the home, the leader of the home. My wife's my equal, she's my partnership, co-partner in crime. That she's to be with me, working with me, and if she's not working with me, then that really makes the marriage not work. But by getting involved and having her, and getting into her world and becoming that, then there's benefits to that that benefit you both out, not just where she's so stressed out every day that she feels like, oh, he's going to come home, he's going to do this and this and this, and I'm stuck with the kids for another 4 or 5 hours before I even put my head on the pillow. And then that, just like I said, it opens the door to too many things, and I think that's why a lot of guys, because they're struggling because things aren't working right in the home, because you're not willing to be part of that where you should be, and also you've allowed it to where you're not letting God be what he needs to be in your home, letting him be the head of your home, letting him control your home. But if you allow those things to come in, it's going to be hell on earth. And there's a lot of guys too that I know have, even in the classes I've talked about, that have said if they ever told their wife, they'd probably leave them. But again, you have to bring the truth out into the light. You can't let it hide in the darkness, even though it may be painful. There's consequences to every sin. Some more than others. I understand that, but you have to get it out into the light and let God deal with it and go from there. And you can't be responsible for how the other person's going to react. But you're responsible for you as a human being, and then especially if that was something maybe caused your marriage to be destroyed, and then you bring it into another marriage, it just is endless circle that unless you break free, it's like anything. But I just I have a compassion and an empathy for those guys because of what it did to me, and it's just something that's real. And very, very real, that we have to address. And men have to be set free, and the only one that's going to do that is Christ. But it's not going to, you can't do it alone. And hopefully you can get your wife involved, and you get other people involved, and I guarantee you they can overcome it. They can overcome it. Never thought I could, but they can overcome it. If they really want to get victory over it. It's like with anything. You can't get victory over it.
Amen. Kathy, share with us your heart.
When you give your heart to the Lord, make it for keeps. Don't just think, like Dan was saying, that I can give my heart to the Lord and then live any way I want. That's not what we do. We exchange our life for his. We put on Christ. We represent Christ. And the only way that you can do that is to be in his word, knowing what the truth of his word says. That way you won't get distracted so easily. Stay with it. Life gets really, really hard. Sometimes you think you've missed God's will. Sometimes you think, I've gone too far. Sometimes you think this isn't fair. Sometimes, there's so many things you can think. Stay with it. God's not done. If you gave your life to Christ, he's not done. We're proof. We're nobody special. We're just absolute proof of God's power, his strength, his word. I often say that I just imagine God several times in our life saying, enough, and things changing like that. If he did it for us, he can do it for you. He's no respecter of persons. One verse that means the world to me, and I used to say it kind of flippantly, just as a verse, Jeremiah 29:11. I know the plans I have for you. That's how I kind of said it. But now I say, I know the plans that I have for you, Kathy. It's to prosper you. I forgot what does it say? Hang on. I got it written down. Hold on. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you, not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. You don't always feel that, especially when you're going through some really, really hard times. We didn't think that maybe God, more that we thought that we had moved away from God or missed his will or something. Stay with it. Stay with it. Trust him. Pray. Stay on your knees. Even when you're confused, just stay there. He hasn't gone anywhere. And if he said enough for us, he can say enough for you. I don't know what's coming down the future, and neither does Dan. But I know he's there. And I know that I can trust him. He's proved to me over and over and over that I can trust him with my entire life. My entire life.
Well, that's where this set of episodes ends. Thank you so much to Dan and Kathy for their vulnerability in sharing the things that God has done in their lives and the way that he has rescued them. We so appreciate Dan and Kathy, and I appreciate you, the listener, for being so diligent and coming back and episode after episode and watching and hearing the stories that God has done throughout the time frame that Dan and Kathy have been both dating and husband and wife. And so thank you so much to you, the listener. If you haven't yet, please hit that like and subscribe button. We would so appreciate it. That helps us to get these stories worldwide of what God does. And many people, can you imagine the many people that need to hear this in even other countries that would see us as being so lax and God never does anything here. Can you imagine what they experience through these stories? So thank you so much. Hit that like and subscribe button. We want to announce that on Friday I am going to take an episode and share with you the experience that I've had with a knee replacement. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk about some of the hardships and some of the things that has happened because of it, some of the people that we've met. I'm going to share with you a little bit about that. So that will be on Friday, and then next week I'm going to go back to some stories from the burn unit. This was a very active time 50 years ago in the burn unit with skin grafts and taking skin and some of the things going on. There's one story that takes place just about this time, and I want to share that story with you next week. So come back on Friday and hear a little bit about the knee replacement procedure. I promise you that will be good. And then next week we'll be talking some more about the burns. Thank you so much, my friend, for stopping by. Thank you for being a part of Healing Together. We appreciate you so much. Have a great next few days till we're together again. God bless.